drone is not just a drone. Some drones are used for observation. There are also drones that are not meant to come back, a self-flying bomb, more or less.
Why is it so hard to do anything about these drones?
They are very small, could be birds. Birds is a very big issue when you are trying to distinguish between drones and not drones.
How do you see the threat landscape evolving over the next 5 or maybe even 10 years, if you dare look that far ahead?
This is an ongoing arms race at the moment where the rest of the world more or less can just watch and learn from Ukraine and, sorry to say, but also from Russia, because they're also very far ahead of the rest of us.
Right now, I think most people working with safety and security in critical infrastructure, they are probably looking a little bit more to the sky than usual. Over the recent weeks, we've seen in the media, we've heard a lot of stories about drone activity over various kinds of sites. Some of them actually being drones, some of them maybe not. But at least the media coverage has been quite extensive. And I think what we are trying to do today is to deep dive into what kinds of drones should a national security be prepared to counter and to mitigate. What kind of drones should critical infrastructure be able to anticipate? And of course, what can we do and why are drones so hard to detect and to do something about? You are listening to Allies in Innovation, a podcast by Terma. My name is Mikkel Svold and I'll be guiding you through this episode. And with me in the virtual studio, I have two guests. I have first of all Karsten Marrup, who is the head of Air and Space Warfare Center at the Royal Danish Defence College. Welcome to you.
Thank you.
I also have you, Lasse Jørgensen, with me. Are you with me as well?
I am, absolutely.
And you are the global lead of drone detection and counter UAS systems at Terma. So I think I want to start out in the light of all the media coverage of drone activities that we've seen. I think it's a fair question to ask, what kinds of drones are we talking about? And are there different scenarios, different contexts that we should be aware of? I don't know, Karsten, would you mind starting out this question?
Yeah, not at all. I'm happy that you asked this, because I would like to stress that a drone is not just a drone. A drone is a term that covers basically everything that moves without a human being on board. So you can have drones in the sky, or on ground, or on land. You got drones in the sea. We even have subsurface drones. And of course, what we're talking mostly about here is drones that are flying. And they come in all sizes and shapes with all kinds of various purposes. And as you just referred to, there's a lot of drone hype at the moment because of incursions in Poland and Romania, and also the talks have been about drones on various sites in Denmark. And these types of drones are all very different. And of course, I think it's very important for people to acknowledge or at least understand that drones are not just drones. They are extremely different in shape, size, and purpose, depending on where they're being used and for what purpose.
Can you try and explain what kinds of drones are we talking then?
You can divide drones into purpose. So some drones are used for observation. We call that intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, or ISR. Basically, they're gathering information about what's going on, either locally near the front line with small drones, on a longer distance with bigger drones, or on a very long distance with drones that are controlled by a satellite, like the Global Hawk, for instance. So that's one type of drones. There are also drones that are not meant to come back. Then the drone actually becomes a weapon, a self-flying bomb, more or less. They also come in different sizes. Again, if you look at the front line, we normally talk about first-person view drones, or FPV drones. The term is a explanation of how the drone is controlled, because the controller wears a pair of goggles and sees the world as the camera on the drone sees the world. And then basically the drone is dived into the target and detonates when contact with the target. Small drones, not very long range, normally up to 40 kilometers if they have a fiber optic cable for control. There are some drones similar to those, but more professionally made. We call them loitering munitions. People may have heard about the Switchblade 600 and 300 American-produced loitering munitions donated to Ukraine. Same purpose as the FPV drones, but sometimes a slightly longer range and also a more capable warhead. And then you will have the big drones like the Iranian-produced Shahed drones. Russia now produced them themselves under the name of Geran 2, and Geran 3, which is a jet-powered drone version of that. Those types of drones are basically cruise missiles, but they're still called drones, unfortunately. And that is a totally different thing from the drones I just mentioned. When Russia employs these drones against the Ukraine, they employ them together with a similar type of drone called Gebera, which is a drone that is made as a decoy. It will gather information and relay that to Russia on its way. It has a very small warhead as well, because now it's there, it might as well do some damage. But the main purpose is actually to be a decoy in order to stress the Ukrainian air defense. And in between all of that, you then have the, as I said, the ISR drones in various sizes.
And these are what you would call frontline drones. So the context here is you're at war and you're at the front line. What about the drones that are not meant for frontline, that are not meant to kamikaze down into something and then detonate? What about those? What are we talking about, say, for critical infrastructure protection?
Well, that depends, because the Shahed drones or the Geran 2 and 3 are not frontline drones. They are long-range precision strike drones.
But I mean, they are for active war.
About a critical infrastructure, definitely. So if we're talking about critical infrastructure, well, there's two sides to that coin, if you ask me. One thing is, again, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. Basically, if those who want to do something not nice to us are trying to gather data, that will be an intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance drone or ISR drone. And again, they would come in different sizes, which again also means that our ability to detect those drones would require different kinds of tools, because radars seldomly see everything, but normally only see what you ask them for, and then we top-tune radars to surveil specific kinds of items. So again, if we have to protect critical infrastructure, well, we can protect that against data collection, but also we need to somehow be able to protect that against attack, and then we are back at the same type of drones that we just talked about.
And last question here, I think, before we turn over to you, Lasse. The aim of this drone activity, of any drone activity, when we are not at war, when we are not talking Ukraine, but what is the purpose for the hostile part, so to say, or the person sending the drone? What is the purpose typically that we should be aware of?
Well, again, data collection is one thing. So basically, if somebody is trying to conduct espionage on you, that's one thing. Another thing could be what we call a hybrid means, which basically means that you will employ in order to see what happens. How does the opponent react? Are you able to stress the opponent? Stuff like that. So for instance, if drones are flying in an airport, you have to shut down the airport. That would be what we normally refer to as hybrid means, for the opponent to make some sort of attack, but we would call it a hybrid attack. It's not a war. So hybrid employment of hybrid means is under the threshold of what we would call war. So that could be a purpose for launching drones over, for instance, an airport.
And I think the hybrid term, the hybrid war, I think we should dive into just in a second. But before we do that, Lasse, why is it so hard to do anything about these drones, be they on the battlefield, frontline kinds of drones, or even critical infrastructure? And I'm guessing also the large drones, if we're talking radar, they would probably be easier to see. Am I right?
You're absolutely correct. And I'm super happy for this breakdown that Karsten made of the drones, because the first question I always ask whenever someone is approaching and asking about counter-UAS systems is, what exactly are you looking for? What is the operational context here that you're looking for? Because it seems, and especially right now out in the public, there is just this thought that a drone is a drone and you can detect it with a counter-UAS system. But as Karsten just clearly showed, there's a very big difference between different types of drones and also the operational capability that these drones have and the characteristics of these drones. And often they are just put into one bucket saying it's drones, and we definitely shouldn't do that. You rightly said, typically these long-range ISR drones, they come at a certain size. They, at least from a radar perspective, how we see them, they more resemble a smaller aircraft than actually what we would normally call a drone. In the other end of the spectrum, you have these FPV drones, quadcopter type drones that are very unlike aircrafts. And typically it has been so that in air defense, you had long range air defense radars, you had medium range, and they were able to see these incoming aircrafts. But when you suddenly have something like a small quadcopter very nearby you, they are not tuned for that. As Carsten also said, you typically have a radar that is tuned for a specific purpose, and we just haven't focused on this before. So we need a different layered approach in order to mitigate all these new threats that we see from the drones.
I think one thing that would be nice for the listener to know, without getting too much into the technical details, but still, why can't your everyday radar, why can't you spot a quadrocopter drone on your radar screen? I mean, we've heard the media covers that we have several airports with activity over them, and I mean the airports themselves have radars all over them. So why can't you see those drones on the radar screens?
So in very simple terms, you can say that these radars are tuned for seeing aircraft at a long range. You want early detection on something incoming, and that is what they're doing. So they're typically looking at something moving fairly fast, a long range, small out there. They are looking somewhat upwards, trying to avoid looking into ground because that gives a lot of background noise. But when you see these small drones, they are very small, so they can hide in background noise. They have the same size of other objects, could be birds. Birds is a very big issue when you are trying to distinguish between drones and not drones. And also they're typically flying fairly low, ground hogging in there. And that poses a difficulty to these existing radars, where there is somewhat of a gap in the existing radars when you are talking of what we have normally deployed for air defense.
And is it only a question of how to tune the software, the what you actually see? So I'm in my mind, I'm tuning in on an FM radio station. So is it only about how to adjust the knob, or is it also something about what hardware is actually in the antenna out there?
It's very much on the hardware, and that comes down to physics. Basically, if you want to have a lot of power out there, you want to see something at a long range, you use a lower frequency band that gives you a less of a resolution. And if you have not very high resolution on your radar, it might be good for seeing something early, but seeing very small targets nearby in a high clutter environment then becomes difficult. So there we want to move to a different type of radar where we have a higher resolution so we can distinguish between the background noise and the drones. But that, of course, comes at the cost then of the long range detection. So these radars that we use specifically for drone detection, well, they have a much shorter range than what you would have in an air defense radar. So in radars, everything is a compromise. Radars are always, I mean, we adhere to physics, unfortunately. So it's always a compromise. We have to choose one or another. And that's why I'm talking about this layered approach where we need multiple different systems in order to basically mitigate all these new threats that we're seeing.
And then, Carsten, let me turn to you again, and then ask you, what do we then need to rest assured that we have a powerful or even a sufficient protection layer of critical infrastructure against these kinds of incursions?
Well, I would say so. Overall, you basically need various radars to detect an incoming threat. You need the ability to identify what the radars are picking up. And if needed, you need the ability to do something about it. So basically, you need some kind of effector as well. And again, that varies very much whether the thing you see is a missile, a cruise missile, an aircraft, a medium-sized drone, a small-sized drone, because there is no one solution fits everything. Doesn't exist. And as Lasse just pointed out, for instance, the radars, well, they will work in different frequency bands because some radars are good at spotting small things quite close. And of course, an early warning radar should be able to see bigger things quite far. So that are two different kinds of radars. And then also you need to put in some filters on your radar. It's basically if you go online and you're searching for a second-hand car or a used car. For instance, there's something in Denmark called Bilbasen or the car base, and you can search, I don't know, let's just say there's 20,000 used cars on Bilbasen. But you don't want to look at all of them. You might want to distinguish between what kind of fuel they run on, which brand they are, and so on and so forth. Because the radar operator doesn't want to see everything. The radar operator don't want to see birds and clouds and a plastic bag flying in the wind if they're looking for aircraft. So they put in filters for that specific radar to look for that specific thing. So various radars for various types of objects, and also various effectors for various types of objects. You don't want to shoot down a Russian Giran 2 drone with a $1 billion or $1 million expensive air-to-air missile, ground-to-air missile. So you want an effector that is tailored for that specific purpose.
I think we should definitely come back to that as well. To how do we level the playing field a little bit more so we don't use effectors that are 1,000 times more expensive than the actual threat. And but what do you think in order to protect? Let's say if we look at only national defense or protecting national integrity in critical infrastructure, what do we then need? Because personally, I would say it's probably not possible to have a radar, a counter-drone radar at every single piece of critical infrastructure in Denmark, because I mean that's all the way from military bases to airports and all the way down to a specific transformer station out on the field, near where I live. So, but I mean, all of them are critical, but how do you cover them all? Is it possible?
Well, first of all, if you need to protect yourself, you need to have situational awareness. So you can't protect yourself from something you don't know is there. And then we're back to the detection part. So we need specific tailored radars for specific tailored purposes. And you're absolutely right. There's no way we can protect everything. So then, of course, we need to prioritize what kind of critical infrastructure, be that military or civilian, is it that we prioritize at least first to protect with the capabilities that we have. And as listeners might know, Denmark is investing heavily in ground-based air defense, which is very capable against aircraft and cruise missiles, and to some extent short-range ballistic missiles. None of that is actually quite useful when it comes to cheap drones, small drones, and especially not if somebody would bring short-range FPV drones into Denmark. Those systems would be absolutely useless against that. So therefore, we need, again, detectors to detect that kind of threat and effectors for that as well. And there's no way we can protect everything, and there's no way we can protect everything against an attack where the attacker chooses to fire a lot of incoming missiles and drones at once, as we see that Russia is doing in Ukraine at the moment. So hard choices need to be made in order to figure out where do we place our critical assets at the most critical infrastructure.
I think, Lasse, let me turn to you then and come back to this notion of leveling the playing field a little bit in terms of cheap weapons, as in commercially available drones, you can buy from wish.com or whatever. Those are now being weaponized or even just used as reconnaissance means. How do you then level the playing field, like Karsten is alluding to, so we don't spend the expensive equipment on very cheap drones?
Well, again, I think it's important to distinguish then between a actual war scenario and then what we are talking about in terms of protecting national critical infrastructure. In the war scenario, as we see in Ukraine, the biggest issue right now is the adversary's ability to scale this threat. When you're looking at the number of drones that you can produce, then it becomes very difficult protecting against, because if you create a counter drone system or air defense system that can handle whatever number of drones simultaneously, on the other side, the adversary will just the next time send a wave with twice as many drones and so on. So that scalability, we really have to somehow cut the curve in terms of the cost of our defensive systems, the effective parts, if we are to mitigate that. And I think that's very much what everyone in this sector is talking about right now. How do we find an effector where we can actually mitigate this large number of incoming potential drones? That is very difficult, and we haven't fully come to that yet. I mean, there's a lot going on in terms of using drone versus drone, interceptor drones in order to do that. But still, if you're talking about the cheap drones as attack weapon, the interceptor drones are maybe 3-4 times as expensive as that drone. So we haven't leveled it out yet. We are getting closer, but we haven't leveled it out fully yet.
I think if I was the operator of a power plant or an airport or whatever piece of critical infrastructure, I would be wondering, what can I do right now, or what should I be looking at right now to be more prepared if such incursions should happen at my facility, in 5 months. So where would your focus be, Lasse?
Well, right now we're talking about a lot about flexible systems, something that you can actually scale with an increased threat. We have seen that now in Denmark over the past couple of weeks that something happened, and then of course we see a heightened focus on it, which means that we are scaling up systems. So if you have a backbone of a system that you can actually scale with this incoming threat, because the nature of a hybrid attack will also be that you don't know exactly what is coming next. That is the whole nature of it, right? So we also need to understand that we cannot have very set systems that can do one thing. We need to be able to scale them as we see an increased threat picture. Now, Karsten also talked about subsea and surface drones. That could also be issued and next time, and then we also have to protect ourselves against that.
Yeah, Karsten,
If
I
may
want to
add,
actually ask. Yeah, I want to ask you the same question.
Okay, good, because I want to answer as well. Well, one thing is to defeat the threat. So basically shooting down the drones, as Lasse just talked about, that's one thing. Another thing is to mitigate the effect. So if you are responsible for a power plant or anything like that, and you ask me what can I do to prepare myself at the current situation, I would turn to something that we call passive air defense, where the active air defense is the part of air defense that tries to defeat the threat. The passive air defense is basically what we do in order to mitigate the effect of a successful attack. And one thing, again, there's a lot of things we can learn from Ukraine. And one of the things we can learn is that they are able to fix their transformator stations, their power plants, whatever, once they've been hit. So if we turn to Denmark, let's ask the power plants, do you have spare parts? Do you know how to fix this if somebody hits it? Is there anything that we could build in a way that it doesn't necessarily break from a 40 kilo Shahed type warhead? And things like that. Is there anything we could disperse, meaning that if something breaks, the thing next to it doesn't break as well because it's placed a bit further away? So all those kind of things that we put on the umbrella of passive air defense is something that not just the military, but the civil society in Denmark as well should be looking into, if you ask me.
I think that's a brilliant point. Yeah.
If I may add to my my answer before, because if we're talking about this national air defense and not air defense, critical infrastructure protection, and what you would do if you were sitting with the responsibility of a certain critical asset here. Well, it's very unlikely that we will see them having effectors to shoot down or mitigate any drones right now. But what we really want to create is also this deterrence. We want to deny whoever wants to send something in the ability to do it covered. We want to be able to create a comprehensive forensic report of any incidents so that we might know where it's coming from and who the adversary is. Because the nature, again, of a hybrid attack is that there should be no smoking gun. There should be nothing pointing directly back to you who has initiated this hybrid attack. So if we can start building up that ability within the critical infrastructure, I also think we have come a long way in terms of doing this. And again, we are not in a war scenario here, so it's a completely different kind of mean that we are looking into in terms of protecting the critical infrastructure.
I think let's try and zoom a little bit out now. You mentioned this hybrid, the term hybrid warfare many times, both of you, and I think it's fair for the listeners out there, and maybe for myself actually also, just to kind of get down what does that actually mean, hybrid warfare. Karsten, you mentioned that it's just below the threshold of what would actually be war. My question is, what can you give examples of a hybrid warfare incursion or incident, and also maybe answer or put some words to what is the purpose of conducting hybrid war?
Well, I would say that basically creating instability is the purpose, and whatever means you can find to do that, that doesn't involve kinetic attack, because again that would be an armed attack, and that would be the first step towards war. You're good to go. So it could be everything. We see cyber attacks in Denmark and basically all countries all over the world at the moment on a daily basis against critical infrastructure that I would label as part of hybrid means. We just talked about how you could fly a small drone into Heathrow Airport and close down the airport. I would label that as hybrid means as well. It could be various kinds of disinformation on X or Blue Sky or whatever that would create doubts in the population about whether something is X or Y. So there's a lot of possibilities to use hybrid means in order to create instability in another nation.
And what can you do about it?
Well, first of all, I think that the more knowledge you have about what this actually means, the better you are defending against it. Having said that, though, an open, democratic society with free news or media, as we have in Denmark, is actually a perfect place to conduct or to use hybrid means. Because, for instance, if you have the open press asking critical questions to politicians because they think something has happened and they believe that the politicians are not doing what they should do, or doing some kind of misconduct about an observation, then you have this discussion going on. You rattle the society. You might even see politicians start to argue against each other, and actually then you are creating effects by using simple hybrid means. So it's actually very difficult to defend against, and I would say that the only thing you can actually do is, of course, again, to realize when something is going on. It's very, very important. Again, you can't defend against something if you don't know it's there. So situation awareness about, for instance, the use of bots on the internet, the use of disinformation on the internet. You have to make sure that you can fact check something and again keep control of the narrative, so it doesn't spin out of control and suddenly something becomes something that it wasn't.
I want to ask you, because my next interview is actually with some guys in or experts in cybersecurity for space operations, so satellites basically. And now we've talked a lot about drones, but drones are, as I understand it, more or the drone activity that we see in Denmark and in the rest of Europe, that is a means or a way to conduct hybrid warfare. So from a hybrid warfare point of view, what do you think I should ask the cybersecurity for space operations? What should I ask them in the next interview?
Well, cybersecurity for space operations is critical, and there have been numerous cyber attacks on link stations, for instance, in Svalbard in Norway, and of course, space is basically providing the ground for the society that we have today. What we're doing right now, we can only do because of space, or not necessarily, but space can also help that with satellite communication. Space is the guarantee for all kinds of money transfers in the world with precision navigation and timing, or PNT, what people normally refer to as the GPS system. So space is really, really important for all kinds of critical infrastructure and the way that modern society works. And of course, cyber then plays a huge role in protecting these space assets, not just the satellites, but the link stations, against cyber attacks. Because if you are able to disrupt communication, if you are able to close down some of these assets, then we could face a whole lot of problems.
Do you have something that you think I should ask them? That you're wondering.
Well, actually, I think that it will be interesting to hear how they do that. So, how do you actually protect your link stations against cyber attacks? And if a link station is attacked, what are the procedures, stuff like that, in order to gain control of your link station again? Also, historically, what kind of attacks have we incurred? What kind of access did the attacker gain to our satellites? And along that way, if you do that, that will be something I would like to watch and listen to afterwards.
I'm going to ask them. I'll make sure that I noted it down here. Lasse, I think I wanna ask you a last question because our time is nearly up. But coming back to drones, now we just detoured a little bit to space, but that was just because I have that upcoming interview. Coming back to drones, how do you see the threat landscape evolving over the next, shall we say, 5 or maybe even 10 years, if you dare look that far ahead?
No is the short answer to the last question. I'm not sure
Okay.
I'll dare look that far ahead. If we just look at what have happened over the course of the last 5 years, I don't think any of us would have guessed where we are right now with this. I think a key to it is the scalability, and on both sides, how is that going to be used right now? That is really what we're looking into, and how you can cut that scalability. It's very easy for the adversary to scale. It's not so easy to scale on the defensive side of that. So we need to come to a point where we can actually do that, and there we are, of course, looking into new technology in order to mitigate that scalability. And then I think the flexibility is also going to be a part of it. We will likely see drones used in various different ways, new ways also that we haven't seen yet. And we talked about subsea surface drones also that is being used, but have primarily been in a warlike scenario. That could also very well be a part of a hybrid attack at some point. And then I think on top of all of this, we also need to think simplicity into it, because we can very easily create a very large layered defense system. But after all, in the end, you need to somehow be able to get this full comprehensive surveillance picture presented in an easy way, so you can actually take a decision based on it, because it's very easy adding more systems. But manning up especially on the man side of these systems is also going to be a challenge. So we need to look at these integrated, simplified systems that can basically take in all of these very diverse data and present it in a simplified way to the operator.
Mm.
I think
And
that's
what about
part of it, yeah.
Yeah, and Karsten, what about you? What are you anticipating of evolvement?
Well, I totally agree with Lasse that giving an idea of what's going to happen in 5 years would be very, very dangerous, especially if you look 3.5 years back at the start of the war in Ukraine, or the full-scale
That's
war.
true.
But one of the things I see at the moment, at least, is the introduction, and not so much the introduction, but the more frequent use of artificial intelligence in drones, and with that comes some sort of autonomy as well, and that should not only be, I think, or will not only be for the attacking part. It's something we need to look into for the defending part as well. Be that in a peacetime scenario or be that in a wartime scenario, because the drones are just getting smarter, and we can see that the development in Ukraine, when one side does something, it takes about 6 to 8 weeks before the other side have found a way, more or less, to work around it, or to come up with a similar solution for their part. So this is an ongoing arms race at the moment, where the rest of the world more or less can just watch and learn from Ukraine, and sorry to say, but also from Russia, because they're also very far ahead of the rest of us. And in that perspective, I believe that artificial intelligence and autonomy will play a much larger role than it does at the moment.
I think let those be the last words, and it's very clear to me that there's lots of work that lies ahead for us, for you two, for the whole defense industry, and for anyone working in critical infrastructure and delivering to critical infrastructure. Thank you so much, Karsten Marrup, for participating, and thank you also to you, Lasse Jørgensen. It was a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you.
Good to be here. Thanks.
And to the listener out there, thank you so much for joining this interview. I hope you got something really interesting out of it. I did, for sure. And of course, if you have any questions or anything you'd like to add to the conversation, to ask us or to just let us know, please do reach out to us at podcast@terma.com, and that was podcast@terma.com, and we'll be happy to see if we can answer your questions. And of course, also, if you have a future topic that you think we should talk about, let us know on that email. That would be very nice. Also, I want to ask you one little favor. If you like this episode, do share it with your colleagues or friends or whoever you think might find it interesting. That really helps us spread the words and spread the knowledge that we get presented from these brilliant people. So thank you so much for listening, and all I have left to say is see you in the next episode.